Emergency measures being imposed, the nation's leader says it's designed to save lives. Also, new protocols in place at local banks. And social distancing are Bahamians taking it seriously. The Bahamas Tonight, the Northern Edition starts now.
This is the Bahamas Tonight, Northern Edition.
Bahamas, I'm Shashina Roll-Farquharson. As always, it is so great to have you with us. Topping the news, the nation's leader says the world is at war against COVID-19 and working together, this threat will be defeated. 2 more cases of COVID-19 have been confirmed in the Bahamas, and there is concern that the numbers could continue to rise. This morning, the nation's leader presented a new order in Parliament that outlines how the government will combat the COVID-19 crisis in the country. Sabrina Brown reports.
2 new cases of the COVID-19 virus confirmed in the nation's capital, and the country is now officially in a state of emergency. This latest development coming from the nation's leader, Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Dr. Hubert Minnis, as he tabled the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Regulations 2020 in the House of Assembly this morning. Prime Minister Minnis says health officials confirmed those additional cases of COVID-19 in New Providence late last evening.
These individuals were identified through contact tracing, and the Ministry of Health Surveillance Unit has aggressively undertaken contact tracing activities for the initial case reported. These contact tracing investigations have revealed that household members of the COVID-19 positive patient traveled to jurisdictions with known community transmission, that is Canada, Trinidad, and Dubai. And these household contacts have been quarantined and samples taken for testing. Other contacts, Mr. Speaker, including healthcare providers, are being investigated to determine their level of exposure and their level of risk. A total of 30 contacts of the COVID-19 positive patient have been identified.
The Prime Minister says the proclamation of emergency gives the government the necessary and emergency powers to aggressively combat the COVID-19 pandemic.
The regulations allow for the following new authority for state. Where a health officer has reasonable grounds to believe a person is or may be infected or contaminated with COVID-19, and the health officer considers there is a risk the person might infect or contaminate others, the health officer may order such a person detained for screening and assessment. And following such assessment, a health officer is empowered to impose on or in relation to that person any other restriction or requirement the health officer considers necessary to remove or reduce the risk of infecting or contaminating others. Mr. Speaker, we need the power to order people into isolation to stop the spread of this virus. Through these regulations, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister may, by order, cause to be revoked or suspended all permits for the use of public open spaces in any particular area or an entire island or the country as a whole in the interest of public health safety. The Prime Minister may, by order, prohibit the assembly of 2 or more persons in a public place in any area specified in the interest of public health.
The Prime Minister also now has the power to waive or vary the payment of any fees for the testing and medical services in relation to COVID-19.
If by chance God forbid, that we find ourselves in a situation where more medical facilities are needed then the Prime Minister has the power to ensure that each and every Bahamian citizen in this country receives medical care, regardless of their financial circumstances. The Prime Minister has the power to waive the fees or adjust the fees at every medical facility and every hospital in this country, whether private or public, to ensure that every Bahamian is safe.
The order also prohibits the dissemination of malicious fake news.
These regulations, Mr. Speaker, no person shall publish or cause to be published, posted, or reposted over any media platform, inclusive of social media, any purported news or report or purported statement of fact, knowing or having reasonable cause to suspect the same. That is untrue, false, or may incite public fear, panic, or ethnic hatred.
The Prime Minister says broader social distancing is key to limiting the spread of COVID-19, and through these regulations, he may require the closure of all educational and religious institutions and businesses that cater to the public unless permitted otherwise by the order. It may also prohibit the visitation by persons to all residential care establishments and correctional facilities. The regulations also provide for curfews if deemed necessary. The nation's leader gave these words of hope from Psalm 46.
God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear though the earth give away and the mountains fall into the hearts of the sea. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress.
Now, Prime Minister Minnis says now is not the time for panic and selfishness, but rather for discipline and sharing. He says we must remain united in this time of crisis. Sabrina Brown, ZNS Network News.
Thank you, Sabrina. Well, Deputy Prime Minister Peter Turnquest making it clear during his contribution that no additional borrowing is anticipated at this time due to the coronavirus. And with the recorded cases jumping from 1 to 3 overnight, he says the numbers are expected to increase. Turnquest outlining the Phase 1 financial strategy to COVID-19 to alleviate concerns by Bahamians and assist those impacted by the global virus.
That securing public health remains our paramount priority. So we are directing additional resources to bolster the public health care system. Lessening the economic burden imposed on individuals, families, and businesses is also a top priority. So we are channeling additional resources for social assistance support and for temporary unemployment benefits for groups not typically eligible. Minimizing the needs for layoffs and shoring up employment retention is a top priority. So we are also directing substantial financial resources towards small businesses to support them in maintaining their operations.
It also include up to an additional $11 million being allocated to the health sector, as well as $4 million for food assistance and social support for displaced workers.
We are setting aside $4 million to provide food assistance and social support for displaced workers directly impacted by the virus through the Ministry of Social Services. These food assistance vouchers of $100 every second week will be targeted primarily to persons within the hospitality industry who are facing reduced work weeks. This allocation will allow for up to 8 weeks of benefit payments, but may be adjusted according to need. 3, the government is allocating $10 million to provide for a temporary unemployment benefit administered through the National Insurance Board for self-employed persons working in the tourism industry.
Now, the minister also noting that the government is committed to $20 million in short-term loans to small Bahamian businesses impacted by COVID-19. For persons who contract the coronavirus or are quarantined because they are sick, they can also benefit through NIB. And additional recent disconnections from water and sewage will be reconnected. The minister also noting that his ministry has also included the Clearing Banks Association in their consultation.
And individuals who are temporarily laid off because of the economic impacts of COVID-19 will be eligible for unemployment benefits up to the regular 13-week period if necessary. NIB published information on this yesterday to remind persons of these benefits already available to them under the NIB program. The government has requested, and Water and Sewage has acquiesced, to suspend all water and sewage disconnections and to reconnect all recently disconnected services for residential customers to ensure that personal hygiene is not compromised. As this issue progresses, the banks have stated their intent to offer more tailored products and services to persons who financially are negatively impacted by the economic effects of COVID-19. The banks, however, stressed that for now, it is important that clients who, because of their changing circumstances, find themselves in financial duress, that these customers should go in before they fall into arrears.
Meantime, Minister of Health Dr. Dwayne Sands says health officials now have an additional 750 test kits on hand to test for the novel coronavirus or COVID-19, and an additional 5,000 to 6,000 are on order. During a press conference in the Capitol this afternoon, Dr. Sands telling members of the media that medical officials on all islands in the country are able to screen for the virus.
The lab that runs the test, however, is located in New Providence. But on every island, in every community, there are individuals who are trained and prepared to evaluate, to assess patients who may be concerned that they have symptoms suggestive of been exposed to somebody. They can be seen on every island, in every community. Specimens will be taken from them. They are then flown to New Providence, not the patient, the specimen. And the specimen is then examined and the test run. Now, if somebody is so ill that they require hospitalization, not isolation or quarantine, not the 80% plus that will have mild disease. If you are sick enough to require hospitalization, we will come and get you. We will send a plane to come and get you and bring you into one of the hospital facilities in New Providence.
Well, President of the Grand Bahama Christian Council, Reverend Robert Lockhart, confirming today that for the next 2 weeks, church leaders will cooperate with the directives that the government is proposing by asking the church to put a hold on large gatherings.
Most churches on this Sunday will still meet with their congregations to give final directives as to what will be happening for the next 2 weeks. And I can say for us from the Grand Bahama Christian Council perspective and our church leaders, we're encouraging churches for the next 2 weeks to cooperate with the guidelines that's being put forward by the government and the Ministry of Health. And as we do come together this Sunday, probably finally for the next 2 weeks to encourage our congregants, our churchgoers and believers and all of us as Bahamian citizens to let's continue to follow the guidelines.
And he says it is important not only to protect ourselves but others, and he's encouraging all citizens to take heed to the protocols.
We also encourage all believers in all churches and all of us as Bahamians to be praying and praying God's protection. We believe that God will continue to protect us and continue to keep us. Let's continue to do our part to be responsible citizens, responsible people, and taking care of ourselves and taking care of one another. I think after the 2 weeks is up, the church is going to, of course, revisit and look at the way forward, as we know that it's important for us as God's people to continue to come together, to pray, to worship, to receive instruction from God's word, and to fellowship. And that's something that we will continue to do in the long term.
Meantime, those in the financial sector are also monitoring the COVID-19 pandemic. The Clearing Banks Association of the Bahamas releasing a statement this week reassuring customers that banks across the country are taking the necessary steps to help protect individuals who are accessing bank services as well as bank staff during this time. This morning, our Italia Hall visited several banks on Grand Bahama to assess the situation.
When our ZNS News team visited some of the major banks on Grand Bahama, they were limiting the amount of customers on the inside, all in an effort to safeguard against the COVID-19 virus or any other contagious illnesses. But not all banks were observing the same protocols. But at First Caribbean Bank, a long line stretched outside of the bank's door, and security officers who were wearing gloves were only allowing 5 customers in at a time.
That's a good idea, but the line is very long. I can't wait right now.
I guess you have to do what you have to do. All the precautions taken, I guess, to safeguard the public. I guess they're doing it in the best interest of the public.
We're learning as we go, and so we're supposed to do our best to support the authorities, the safety precautionaries that are being put in place.
It's a good precaution. I'm a health worker. I know it's a very good precaution.
Joanne Sawyer says she agrees with the bank's decision.
I'm in one of the high-risk groups, but I'm just fine. But I'll always err on the side of caution is what I say. Seriously, because you don't know. As a doctor pointed out to me the other day, even though you're showing no symptoms, 2 weeks from now you might show symptoms, and who knows who you may have given it to, or who may have given it to you.
Over at Scotiabank, a line could be seen as well, and according to customers, only 2 to 3 customers were permitted inside the bank at a time.
I was very pleased to see that the bank is only allowing a certain number of persons at a time, because I'm happy that they're taking the necessary precautions. I don't think that we can be too careful to protect life, because one life lost is one too many.
Now the Clearing Banks Association is encouraging all customers to reduce their in-branch transactions, use alternative channels provided by the various banks, like online platforms and mobile applications. Persons are also being advised to avoid the crowd in bank branches and to use ATMs instead. Speak with your bank via telephone, and if you are feeling unwell or have flu-like symptoms, you should stay at home. Italia Hall, ZNS Network News.
Coming up, the island of Abaco preparing for COVID-19. That story and more up next.